A group of researchers set out to answer a puzzling question. How can the most connected generation in history also be the loneliest? They studied hundreds of thousands of young lives and found something unsettling. Never before had so many people carried thousands of friends in their pockets, received messages from across the globe in an instant, and broadcast every waking moment online. And yet, that same generation reported record levels of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Counseling services were overwhelmed, prescriptions climbed, and many admitted that despite being endlessly connected to a screen, they had never felt more disconnected from actual people. So their study concluded that technology can link devices together, but it cannot touch the deepest longing of the human heart, the longing to be truly known, to be truly loved, to be truly present with someone. We have mastered communication without mastering communion. We have more followers than friends. We have more notifications than conversations. We have more screens than tables. And this is exactly why the wisdom of the kingdom sounds so foreign to a world like ours. The deepest human need was never simply to be connected. The deepest human need is to belong. And Christ does not send us a message and move on. He calls us by name. He gathers us into God's family and says, "Come to me, and I will give you rest." That is the wisdom that the world cannot understand. And Paul begins Romans 7 with startling honesty. I do not understand my own actions. He's not describing a spiritual failure that is unique to himself. He's describing every believer who has ever tried to live faithfully and found their own will working against them. We know that we should forgive, and yet we hold on to bitterness. We know that we should serve, and yet convenience usually wins. We know that we should trust God, and yet fear so often speaks louder. We know that we should give generously, and yet our hands instinctively tighten around what we have. So the problem was never money. Money simply exposes where the real battle already lives. Jesus never said, "Where your money is, there your heart will be." He said, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So the order matters. The kingdom always begins with the heart. So stewardship doesn't start with the offering plate. It starts in surrendering, long before we ever reach for our wallets. Jesus paints a picture in Matthew 11. Children in the marketplace playing a wedding song and no one dances. Playing a funeral dirge and no one mourns. Nothing moves them. John the Baptist came fasting. They rejected him. It's too severe. Jesus came eating and celebrating. They rejected him. It's too indulgent. So the issue was never John. The issue was never Jesus. The issue was and still is the human heart. Nothing has changed. The world still measures success by accumulation. God measures success by faithfulness. The world says, protect yourself. Jesus says, lose your life for his sake. The world says, store up. Jesus says, give it away. The world says, own more. Jesus simply says, follow me. So the wisdom of the kingdom will always look foolish to a heart that hasn't yet been changed by Christ. And this is not a flaw in kingdom's logic. It is a sign of how radically different it is from the logic of this world. And in the middle of describing a stubborn and unmoved generation, Jesus suddenly turns to praise. I praise you, Father, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children. And children understand something adults often forget, that everything that they have came from someone else. They receive it with gratitude instead of entitlement. They trust without needing to calculate every risk. They depend on their parent without embarrassment or apology. That is the kingdom wisdom in its purest form. Faith does not begin with having all the answers. It begins with trusting the right person. And that is why stewardship at its core is not primarily an act of calculation or budgeting. It is an act of trust extended toward a father who has already proven himself faithful. And 2 years ago, this copper jug presented to this very church 75 years ago in 1949 by our own Sunday school children. Well, they are no longer Sunday school now, but it was discovered in a Pinetown scrapyard, moments away from being crushed and melted away for its metal. And a woman by the name of Lynn Barnard, who has no connection to St. Agnes, saw it lying among the scrap and felt an inexplicable urge to rescue it, and quietly kept it safe for nearly a year before knocking on our door and placing it back in our hands, still engraved with our name, given by the Sunday school children of the Church of the Holy Spirit, Kloof, 1926 to 1939, Christmas 1949. So this jug once filled the font for baptisms and had quite possibly been used in foot washing on Maundy Thursday. It had done its quiet work for decades until it was lost, forgotten, and nearly destroyed. And yet God, in his providence, brought it home. So this jug is a parable. It reminds us that what one generation gives in faith does not simply disappear, even when it's lost from sight for a season. Someone gave it 75 years ago, trusting that it will outlive them, and it has. Someone else, decades later, and unknowingly, became an instrument to preserve it. And now it sits among us again. This past Maundy Thursday, we used it in our feet washing service. So this is not just a decorative relic, but a testimony that God guards what is entrusted to him, even when we lose track of it ourselves. Someone prayed through seasons of hardship this congregation ever faced. Someone tithed quietly, faithfully when no one was watching, when no one was keeping a score. Someone sacrificed simply so that we could gather here at this moment in history and worship. Every prayer prayed, every child discipled, every hymn sung, every quiet act of generosity became part of the ongoing story of this parish. Because someone gave before us, we are here today. And because we give today, someone we may never meet will encounter Jesus tomorrow. That is kingdom wisdom. We are not owners of what has been built here. We are custodians of it. Stewards entrusted with the story that is still being written. And we honor those whose faith and sacrifice built this church long before most of us arrived. We carry the mission forward today in our time with what has been entrusted to us. We prepare a spiritual home for children, for grandchildren, for generations we may never live to meet. And the leaflets, I hope you've got them. These leaflets that have been distributed by our welcomers when we arrived, they speak of raising up leaders, of strengthening families, of building a spiritual inheritance for those still to come. And that is kingdom thinking. We never build only for ourselves. We build for those who will stand here, where we are standing, long after we are gone. And after speaking about wisdom hidden from the proud and revealed to the humble, Jesus does something that is so remarkable. He does not demand, but invites. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest. Not come once you have enough money. Not come once your finances are sorted out. Not come once your life looks like it's been put together. Simply come. Because stewardship was never meant to be one more burden stacked on top of an already exhausting life. It is an exchange of burdens. We lay down anxiety and we'll receive trust. We lay down the illusion of ownership and we receive the freedom of stewardship. We lay down fear and we receive peace. So the kingdom does not ask us to carry more. It asks us to carry differently, with open hands instead of clenched fists. So today is not ultimately about raising money. It's about revealing the kingdom. The kingdom declares that what you possess was never ultimately yours to begin with. Your life is a gift. Your family is a gift. Your abilities are gifts. Your time is a gift. Your finances are a gift. This very church is a gift. All of it belongs to the King. And we have simply been trusted to steward it well for a while. Paul reminds us that our hearts will always struggle. Jesus reminds us that only childlike trust can truly receive kingdom wisdom. And 90 years of faithfulness in this place reminds us that faithful stewardship always outlives the stewards themselves. One generation built, another generation inherited. Now it falls to us to decide what story the next generation will tell. One day, perhaps 90 years from now, someone will stand in this very sanctuary. They may never know our names, but they will worship here because we are faithful now. So may it be said of us that those were the ones who revealed the wisdom of the kingdom. They understood that they were never owners but only stewards. They honored those who came before. They served faithfully in their own generation and prepared well for the generation still to come. So in the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.